Next, we get a message from Tomra, a leading light in drink container recycling. I'm sure all of you have your cans of drinks on the table. Well, guess what? This is a company that really is a leading light when it comes to recycling those cans. As a front runner of the resource revolution, sustainability is at the very core of Tomra's business. Since its establishment in 1972, the company has expanded to 60 markets. They strive to find solutions that are adapted to the needs and objectives of each local market to truly deliver on their sustainability ambitions. And I'll be talking to its CEO just a little bit later. But let's watch this video. Excellent. I'll be speaking to Tove Andersen, the new CEO of Tomra, just a little bit later. But here's another video from another one of our sponsors today. Cyvis is one of the fastest growing global technology leaders, developing and delivering solutions for standardized conference rooms like this one, control rooms, experience centers, and collaboration spaces for government bodies and large enterprises across the globe. Let's take a look at this.
While digitalization is supposed to make everything easier, it sometimes comes with unforeseen consequences. It requires us to learn new ways to communicate, new ways to collaborate. When Cyvis creates spaces for people and organizations to collaborate. We make sure that groups of people can see the same information at the same time, regardless of where they are. And in order to do that, we need to make sure our products are reliable and stable. That's why we make them ourselves. We make both hardware and software. We design, build, ship, and install. The platform we've created makes every room in every location work in the same way. We call it Cyvis Easy, and it allows us to design experiences.
Fantastic messages there. Now we can kick off our next session on sustainable urban solutions by hearing from the Associate CEO of Enterprise Singapore, Geoffrey Yeo, and he sent us a video message.
Thank you, Innovation Norway and Norwegian Business Association Singapore, for having me say a few words for this Sustainable Urban Solutions panel. The theme, Adopting Future Technologies Now, is extremely relevant as the world searches for solutions to address pressing sustainability challenges. Sustainability is a growing priority globally, especially in Southeast Asia. The impact of climate change on the region is expected to rapidly intensify, and there is therefore a need to strengthen its adaptation and mitigation measures, even as the region continues to drive towards economic development. As evident from the earlier discussions in today's program, the Singapore government certainly recognizes the threat of climate change and has put forth several targets and initiatives to advance Singapore's agenda on sustainable development. In February this year, the Singapore Green Plan 2030 was unveiled to chart out the country's efforts over the next 10 years and includes key efforts such as increasing solar deployment, improving energy efficiency and greening of buildings, scaling up EV charging infrastructure, and reducing waste. The development and deployment of green and sustainable urban solutions will be key in addressing environmental issues and driving sustainable development for Singapore and the region. Now, this will mean significant opportunities for businesses, In fact, a report by Bain released last year estimated that Southeast Asia's green economy could provide up to $1 trillion in annual economic opportunities by 2030. At Enterprise Singapore, we work closely with companies within the urban solutions domain, and there are potential opportunities in a number of areas that we see. Firstly, demand for clean energy and low carbon solutions, including renewable energy generation, energy storage systems, and in the longer term, areas like carbon capture, utilization and storage, and hydrogen. Waste management and circular solutions is another important area, which includes the efficient processing of electronic and plastic waste, water treatment and management, and development of circular solutions and materials. There are also many opportunities in urban mobility and infrastructure, and this includes EV charging infrastructure, vehicle fleet electrification, and energy efficiency solutions for buildings such as efficient cooling, smart energy, and facilities management. Lastly, sustainable food manufacturing, which includes high-tech urban and precision farming, as well as alternative proteins. The demand in the region for such urban solutions is expected to grow as climate and environmental pressures increase. And with these opportunities, enterprises should aim to innovate, to develop and adapt solutions, especially for this tropical urban environment. As a key hub in Asia, Singapore is well placed to support sustainability efforts in the region and offers international partners and companies a suitable base to be plugged in to the sustainability needs in the region, to innovate and to scale up their operations. For example, as part of the Research, Innovation and Enterprise Initiative, the Singapore government will support the development and commercialization of innovative solutions pertaining to sustainability. We also have strong innovation platforms to support and facilitate partnerships and co-innovation. For instance, Enterprise Singapore organizes the annual Sustainability Open Innovation Challenge, which brings together various industry stakeholders and corporates to develop innovative solutions for challenge statements across various themes such as resource efficiency, green transport, and zero waste. There is also much that enterprises in Norway and Singapore can gain via collaborations in the sustainability space. Norwegian enterprises with strong technologies and capabilities can explore partnerships with Singapore enterprises that possess the experience and in-market knowledge operating in Southeast Asia to scale and deploy solutions to the regions as well as in Europe. To this end, Enterprise Singapore conducts business missions to foster exchanges and potential partnerships between companies from both countries. An example would be the virtual hydrogen fuel cell mission that was conducted in January this year. In summary, the demand for green and sustainable urban solutions to drive sustainable development in the region will mean significant opportunities for businesses. Singapore is a good base for overseas partners to understand regional sustainability needs and to innovate and develop suitable solutions. Enterprises in Norway and Singapore can certainly benefit by building partnerships to build up capabilities, and in doing so, support the region's sustainable development. Thank you.
Well, Geoffrey Yeo there from Enterprise Singapore with that crucial message around sustainable urban solutions, which is what we're talking about in this session. And you heard that very long list from him of what needs to get done. So on this very same topic, let's now go to a fireside chat with the CEO of Tomra. Of course, that was the wonderful video you saw earlier. Tove Andersen joins us now from Oslo, I believe. Great to see you, Tove. Obviously, there's no fireside with us here, and you're joining us virtually. But again, a great delight to talk to you, and welcome to our conference. Now, first off, we know that Tomra is in 60 different countries, including here in Asia, and you're now starting to make some inroads into Singapore. So give us a sense of the history and mission of Tomra. What is it exactly?
Thank you very much, and I'm really happy to be here. Would have liked to be there physically, but unfortunately that is not possible currently. So Tomra was established almost 50 years ago, and it actually started with a reverse vending machine to solve the issue of recycling beverage containers in Norway. And it has grown from that to be really a global company focusing then on sorting and recycling. And this is, and it's been the mission of this company the whole time, is to solve the practical issues around how we use our resources. You know, the way that we are using our resources currently is not sustainable. And as Geoffrey said, you know, we should look at waste. And in Tomra, we say that there shouldn't be any waste. All resource is valuable. So the focus of Tomra is really about how can we collect more of the resources, and how can we then create ideally really closed loop so that we can reuse resources over and over again to exactly the same purpose.
Fascinating. Now, I know, Tove, you've taken the helm a relatively short time ago. How are you finding all of this transition, obviously looking after such a big business, and what are you learning about the challenges there are, particularly in markets like Asia?
Yeah, so I joined 2 months ago, and it's been a fantastic experience coming into the company and also coming into this space. I've been working partly with circular economy issues before, but you know, the more I read about this, you know, the more aware do you become of the actual problem. I was also surprised, for example, reading up before this event, that in Singapore, you know, only 6% of the plastic is recycled in Singapore, which you believe is a very advanced country. If you look at the world scale, you know, only 14% of the world's resources are being recycled. If you look at, you know, the litter in nature, if you look at plastic in ocean, projections shows that, you know, if we continue as we do today, in 2050, there will be more plastic in the oceans than fish. So this is like a real issue. So it's both from a litter perspective, but also from a climate perspective. This is a real issue that we need to tackle. We will not meet the climate ambitions unless we really look at our resources differently.
Right. I mean, you mentioned there the plastic pollution issue is just devastating. But again, you know, it is extraordinary that, you know, advanced countries like Singapore are simply not recycling enough of it. So, you know, give us a sense of the kind of innovations a company like Tomra is able to bring to Asia, particularly addressing, obviously, the huge devastation of plastic pollution.
Yeah, so I think in Singapore, because there hasn't really been a litter issue, this has probably not been high on the agenda before now, but it's really positive to see that now Singapore has put this high on the agenda and want to do something about it. So what are the kind of innovations we bring? So as I said, first of all, we need to collect the resources. And this is where we have then reverse vending machine technologies, but also holistic solutions on how to make it convenient for the consumer to return, for example, the beverage containers. You need to collect it, but also you need to sort the waste. There is a lot of, even if you do this and you have kind of reverse vending and you collect directly from consumers and you have separate sorting, you know, at your house, there is still a lot of, for example, plastic that will go into mixed waste. And then you need those sorting solutions to take out that plastic. So we have then sensor-based, fully automated solutions where you can take mixed waste and you can pick out plastics, or you can take metal waste and you can pick out the different metals. So that all of this can be then sorted into really high quality raw materials that can be then reused to the same purpose as it was originally.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting to see what Tomra is doing, but do you think Asia as a region really is doing enough? I mean, how imperative is it for firms like yours to expand here, to help drive a sustainability agenda for all?
In general, I don't think the world is doing enough, and also I don't think Asia is doing enough. First, if we talk about Singapore, I think Singapore is, you know, the country that other countries in Asia is looking up to. I think that's why it is important for Singapore to be in the forefront here, to be the leader. We hope now with what Singapore is planning regarding, you know, a deposit return scheme can really be a flagship that other countries in Asia can look up to. And of course, we know the whole litter and waste challenges in Asia. I think if you look at plastic waste globally going into the oceans, you know, I think half of it comes from Asia. So, you know, it's a very significant contributor. So for us, it is important because it's an important market opportunity. But also, if you're really going to tackle these issues with waste, litter, and climate change, you need to solve Asia as well.
Yeah, I mean, really fascinating, isn't it? And in terms of the kind of opportunities you hear, you know, that basically exist here in the region, what kind of opportunities are you looking at? What can Tomra really deliver on in terms of helping Asian economies, you know, transition? And I believe you are already in some Asian markets like Japan and Korea, for instance.
Yes, we are in several Asian markets. So already we also have production facilities in China. And in Tomra, we have 3 segments. We have the collection, which is really about collecting beverage containers in general. We have the sorting, which is linked to then waste sorting, metal recycling sorting, and so forth. And we have the food segment where we sort food. And actually, we are in Asia on all of these segments, and all of these segments have growth opportunities. I think what Tomra can bring is because we have then 50 years experience from many other countries that are more mature than the Asian countries. We know how you should design very well, you know, a deposit return scheme so that you get the consumers to actually return all the beverage containers so they can be recycled. We know when you set up a waste management treatment facility, how you should implement sorting technology into that so that you get all these high quality materials out so they don't get burned or they don't go on a landfill and litter. So this is the approach that we have. We are not only an equipment, you know, a seller of equipment. We want to be a partner with governments, with waste management companies, with food processors and so forth. So we want to be partners with them, work with them, taking the experience we have from many, many countries throughout the world to help them set up this in an efficient way in Asia.
Yeah, interesting. Food processing and everything else, and those vending machines that you were talking about as well. Really fascinating technology that Tomra has, which is, you know, tried and tested. You guys have had this technology for a long time. You're simply bringing it and introducing it to all these new markets. So there's lots of opportunity, isn't there?
Yes, and as I said, you know, the outcome of this will be less litter, but also, you know, this is important for CO2 emissions. So if you were just introducing, you know, the best waste management practices on existing technologies, you know, just implementing what we have today throughout the globe, we could reduce the annual global emissions with 2.77 billion CO2. And that is, I don't have the Singapore figure, but it's 56 times the Norwegian annual emission. And that is just about, you know, rolling out the existing technology. And we are, of course, working constantly on new technology as well to improve so that we can reuse and recycle more and more. So this is significant and it is important in really the fight against climate change.
Yeah. Now, we've got less than a minute left, Tove, in this conversation with you. It's absolutely wonderful to have you here. But I want to ask a question that someone has contributed to Slido. It's a wonderful question, and I should say that we've had some great questions on Slido, but you please would need to put your last names as well. We're getting a lot of first names. If you just have your first name, we can't give you the prize. So this is a great question from Valerie, actually, and she asked it earlier, but I think it very much relates to Tomra and, you know, the sustainability, you know, mission that you have. And she asked, in what ways do you think culture impacts and helps pave the road to sustainability?
Well, I think it's very important. And I think in a company like Tomra, we have a very purpose-led culture. We should just feel filters through the whole organization. I think that's going to be important to attract the best talents because the best talents want to also contribute something positively. But I think it also creates a passion that you don't really see in a company that doesn't have that same kind of purpose. And for me personally as well, that is extremely important, you know, to work in a company where you really feel that you are contributing to something more than just the profitability. And also, I believe that, you know, sustainability is going to be the most profitable business opportunities going forward. So this goes very much hand in hand.
Wonderful. Well, Tove Andersen from Tomra, it's been wonderful speaking with you today. A big round of applause for the CEO of Tomra.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And now we continue our conversation about, you know, sustainable urban solutions. And I'd like to introduce our speakers. Poyan Rajamand is joining me here on stage. He's the Executive Director of Barghest Building Performance. Welcome, Poyan. And virtually we have Tine Rørvik of SCG, the Global Director of Circular Economy from SCG, joining us. Welcome, Tine. Great to see you too. Now, before we begin, I'd like to hear more about what each of your companies do. Tine, I believe you have a video that will help explain a bit more about SGC.
Yes, it's a video, so...
Yeah, shall we watch it?
Astonishing SNIC office here in Norway. The iconic house located here just by the riverbanks of Porsgrunn. Buildings actually account for as much as 40% of the global energy consumption. So the construction industry has to become much more sustainable. The unique design of Powerhouse sets the standard for the future building, combining beautiful architecture by Snøhetta, new innovative technology, and sustainability. The main construction of the building is low carbon concrete and steel, and in addition the house is then covered by a solar cell, giving as much as 239,000 kilowatts per hour every year of electricity. In addition, we have underground wells, 9 of them, and this covers the whole energy consumption need of the building and even more than that. Other technical solution to be mentioned is very smart rib facade, which is protecting against sunshine. You have a concrete in the inner walls and ceilings and floor that kind of act as a thermal mass. You have a very smart ventilation system, which is a kind of a natural design. Very silent, very efficient, and in addition you have a COVID-friendly door opener, so you don't even have to touch them. All in all, this reduced the energy demand of the building to as much as 66% compared to similar buildings. Powerhouse is really a sustainable model for the future workspaces and very well aligned with our SDG mission to develop our business through innovation and sustainability. It is really about being a good role model, to walk the talk, and this is also shared very much among our employees.
Working for SDG gives me the opportunity to influence key global issues, such as climate emergency and circular economy. And through our work with international alliances and partnerships, we engage, together with many of you, with the wider business community to find solutions through collaboration. And it is very inspiring to work from this very cool climate positive office space, which really shows the commitment of SDG towards net zero.
It's really a strong drive from the Nordic governments and EU to change towards a green economy through such as electrical vehicles, healthcare, battery technology, and renewable energy, etc. So with a joint effort of our SDG office here and our innovation center Norner, Norway has become a strategic hub for us to develop network, partnership and technology. That is to reach then our common goals of SDG towards the Paris Agreement.
Well, that's very impressive, Tine. I'm sure we all agree we want to work in a building like that one. Give us a sense of just, how tough is that to achieve? I mean, obviously it's a mission that needs to be stated. It needs to be literally etched in stone, forgive the pun. Give us a sense of the mission of SCG.
Well, I mean, we heard this earlier today about the critical and urgent need for us to cut our carbon emissions. And of course, SCG, just to mention that we are over 55,000 people with headquarters in Bangkok, and we are large into chemical industry. So building and construction through cement industry is one part, and then we are also producing. So that's of course a large CO2 emitter, and then we have also polymer production, plastic production. That of course is a challenge also related to plastic littering, and then we have a paper and packaging production. So we are very huge and a lot of assets in Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, and around, and of course a lot of collaboration with Singapore too. So I mean, when we pledged then last year that we will go net zero, I mean, wow, this is really tough. But of course you mentioned a little bit earlier about greenwashing, and it was a discussion on the investor. So of course, I mean, we cannot just say it. We also have to have a proof that we are doing it. So that's we working with these ESGs and have to set new targets for every year how we are going to reach the net zero. And of course, then we need buildings like this. So I think that our building in Norway, where we are, then our office is an inspiration for all cities around both Singapore, but of course also Bangkok, to build this kind of building, which for me is about the smart city. So I think it fits very well. But again, we have to use a lot of means. We are working with natural climate solution, etc. too. But I mean, reflecting a little bit on what Tove talked about, we are also collaborating with partners like Tomra, and we work with Alliance to End Plastic Waste, which is based in Singapore, and is a huge network of large industries that is actually working towards ending then plastic waste, doing projects on the ground. We're investing $1.5 billion in this type of assignment, and there it is. I mean, first of all, if you manage to reuse material, material production counts for 40% of the CO2 emission. And then we have to tackle the littering, of course. And as Tove mentioned, we need to design also sorting systems. And there, I would say that's very linked to the smart city. And we need to have applications and way to do that, which is fitting for the urban people. So we have, for instance, now a large project in one district in Bangkok. And then we have, we are today spending, we're in a luxury situation, we are spending 1.7 times as much liter.
I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm just trying to jump in because thank you so much. We've heard quite a lot about what SGC does. That's fantastic. We have Poyan here. So give us a sense of what your firm does when it comes to sustainability.
So we saw SGC does amazing work for new building. Where we come in is trying to help existing buildings reduce their energy consumption. So BVP is a Singaporean company that has a software hardware package that we can retrofit into any air conditioning system and just operate existing systems better. And as a business model, we install these for free, and we just take a portion of the savings that we achieve in order to make it easier for people to embark on this journey.
Yeah.
So we started with Singapore, and now we are representing in 10 countries around the region.
Yeah, that's extraordinary. How do you make money?
Well, again, I think where Tomra is talking about waste, the way to think about it is a lot of energy is being wasted in the buildings right now by not being intelligent enough. So what we are doing is adding a layer of intelligence and removing that waste. And that waste is now savings that can be shared between us, both economically, of course, impact-wise.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, obviously, we've been talking about sustainability and how it's imperative because let's face it, if we don't do anything about climate change, the impact is devastating for humanity. But ultimately, for a lot of business, it is, it's not always cost effective. It's going to cost companies more. And, a lot of it is obviously good for the environment, but not necessarily good for the bottom line.
Yeah.
So give us a sense of, how do you go out there and convince companies?
So I believe, again, right now, our solutions in sustainability space must make business sense. So BVP, for example, what we do is we take a portion of the saving. If you think about solar, they have started selling solar cells by selling you basically power as a discount to what you can buy outside. I think innovations in business model will help solving some of these issues. Carbon credits, for example, I think will solve some of these issues where you generate actual economic value that can be shared between different parties. But right now, as we have talked about, it's all about urgency. At the same time, that's why we need to find solution for existing buildings, existing factories, existing ports, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's definitely, we need solutions that we can't possibly address in this very short conversation. Tine, I'm looking at you now. In terms of, convincing people that this is the right thing to do when it comes to being, cost effective as well, how do you do that? How do you make that argument?
I mean, you always have to try to combine sustainability with profitability if you want to enter in a business. If not, the investor will not invest in you. But I think that people are. You talked about the culture. I think people start to be more and more aware, and it means, for instance, if you talk about energy savings, for instance, it doesn't necessarily cost more. You can actually save money. We're now building up all our construction offerings to kind of use less water, use recycled material. And then again, if you manage to make a good system where people can get money back for returning, for instance, bottles or waste to an app system, then of course it is a benefit for people, and they will do it. So I don't think it's so difficult, actually. It's just that we need to have a mental change, and I think that's going on now these days.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, and as you say, mental change. Earlier we had a question about how it really needs a cultural change to some degree as well. Now, I'm really fascinated with the technologies that both your companies bring, because we know that new green buildings, like the one we saw in your video, Tine, and new air conditioning systems, like you speak about, Poyan, they can't all go into the majority of aging skyscrapers. Let's face it, here we are in Suntec City. It's a relatively new building, but still, it probably has aging infrastructure, much like a lot of the buildings around us here. So what can be done with existing infrastructure to try to improve the impact on the climate?
Yeah, so again, retrofitting is big. As I said, our solution can be retrofitted to any building, independent of age and brand. There are other solutions right now with the IoT that allows for sub-metering, generating more data, and helping them do better choices. And again, Singapore government, as you heard from Rambaskar, has come with legislation that forces buildings to upgrade their equipment, even if the building itself is not upgraded. So legislation has also a role in that.
Yeah. And to what extent are you seeing Singaporean and Norwegian companies sort of working together to try to achieve this goal? Tine, I know you talked a little bit about this earlier, but how much is your firm looking to make inroads into Asia, for instance?
Well, we are in Asia, and so it's easy for us. But I think that, of course, I'm working a little bit like a global matchmaker. So that means that many companies also comes to me, and we would like to work with a world leader. Of course, we are collaborating with such as Tomra to find the solutions. So I think that if people companies in Norway want to go to Asia, they need to look also into the new value chains, because typically also where we enter. And for instance, in Thailand, for instance, we don't have good solution for using wind power, which we would need. So if there are a company that has smart technology for this type of thing, it's super interesting for us. So I think that follow this EV trend, following this new trend, that will also bring these companies, that's a good business opportunities for also Norwegian companies to Asia. Because we do have gap on technology.
Yeah. Interesting.
Similar, I think Scandinavia has been in the forefront of the environmental technology. And I think where Singapore companies can play a role is to help bring that technology regionally. I don't think we can just take a technology and expand it in an emerging market. You need to think about the ability to deliver the technology, the price point, the servicing and all that. And Singapore companies have already a presence and a local understanding, cultural understanding that can help driving these technology adaptation regionally. Yeah. So I definitely think there are opportunities to work together.
Great. There are some fantastic questions on Slido, so thank you once again, everyone watching, for putting those questions on. There's one that relates, I think, quite well to what we were talking about earlier around costs. It's a question by Justin Chua. Why must our solutions always be based on an assumption of competitive market costs when the current market has not been built on a green baseline? Fascinating topic. Yeah. Didn't get that many votes, but really great question. So do you want to try
Well,
to
I mean, in some ways, we're in a capitalist society, and if you want to play, if you want to make these people change, if you want the companies to take choice, you need to be in that system. You can't just rely on the corporate governance or CEO's good wishes. So in my view, although I wish it was differently, I think we need to work within that system, as other speakers mentioned, where money will flow to the best, most sustainable choices, and that's how we're going to solve this issue.
Yeah. Tine, do you have a response to that?
I was just thinking that it's super relevant because, actually it's a showstopper in getting the plastic circular. I mean, we don't want plastic to float around. Everybody wants to circle it, but actually that's much more expensive than to produce the new plastic, actually. I mean, you have to launder. I mean, you have to collect it, you have to sort it, you have to launder it. So it's a very cumbersome process. So in the end, the material is more expensive and difficult to get the quality right. So, I mean, and then if we go to the big brand owner like PepsiCo, etc., they want to have perfect material and they don't want to pay more because we as consumer doesn't pay more. So actually, it is not so easy at the moment to get that value chain to go afloat, and that's the same in Europe. And so that's a big problem, actually.
It is a big problem.
So we have to pay more.
How do you convince consumers who don't want to actually pay more? That's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think I agree. Here in Asia, it's very tough to change behavior unless you're really compelled to.
Yeah, we need to also
legislation in place.
Respect that specifically in Asia, you still have countries where on the economical growth path,
right,
where there are people who want to have better lives, and it's very hard to argue why they should not have air-conditioned space and all the amenities that we have.
Yeah.
So we need to find a solution within that.
Yeah. Now, how far away do you think we are from actually making sustainable urban infrastructure a widespread reality? I mean, until I saw your video, Tine, I've just never really seen a convincing green building. I know a lot of buildings have green elements built into them, but it's extraordinary that it's still so far away, that there's just a very few and far between buildings that really are able to, have this technology inbuilt. So how far away are we from, sustainable urban infrastructure becoming, everywhere? The building next to us, for instance. Can we achieve that goal, do you think, of being carbon neutral by 2050? I mean, that's the goal that's out there for everyone. Can it be done?
Should I answer that?
Yes, go ahead.
I think we can drive it quite well, but I think that we need to have help from the different governments. So because I think now I'm representing a huge industry, and I mean we have to use the industry to solve this problem. We are the only one basically that can rebuild the society. But I think that we now, for instance, now we are producing a lot of eco-friendly building materials. So everything is recycled, use less water. Better insulation will also help the cooling requirement, which is a big issue in many warm countries. So I think we can cut a lot. But I think the government, when they are using their, I don't know what the word is, but the public bidding, etc., that they need to put these environmental requirements on the building. And that start to come in Norway now, but that also need to come in other countries, because we are, for instance, starting with public building, would be already a lot. So if the government said, you cannot do this building unless it's a low energy building, then this will start to happen much quicker. But it is about to happen, I think.
Yeah.
I think there's two parts to that question. I mean, in terms of urban infrastructure, we must give some credit to Singapore. I mean, as you heard from Rambaskar, they've been quite ambitious. 80% of the buildings should be green by 2030. 60% of the new buildings are super low energy. They're really showing some leadership on that. But the sad part is that Singapore is not the issue. We will be green here. We can be green Bangkok and Jakarta and Malaysian cities, etc. That will be the bigger challenge. That said, again, the scientists say in the integrated assessment models that we can actually reach that with the technologies that are here if the political will was there. Yeah. So I think back to the point that you made, if there is a political wish to drive legislation, the current technologies that are here can solve our issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, that leads me very nicely into the question at the moment that has the most votes from Gabrielle Chuan Yi Puan. Thank you for that question. On the note of building sustainable communities, how can governments implement policies that will speed up the green transition within the country? Now, Poyan, you talked about how Singapore is achieving this, but this isn't necessarily the case around the region. So how is this going to be possible to do? How do you speed it up?
So I honestly think carbon tax and similar legislation that link the environmental impact to financial impact is the way to go. I think people are underestimating how fast something like EU taxonomy actually ricochets in the supply chain back to our factories here in Asia. So when Apple wants to go and be net zero, Apple doesn't produce, so they go to their chip makers and those guys go to their supply chain and so on and so forth, and that drives change in our society. And then, Paris Agreement forces every country to come up with their own way of achieving it, which I think is potentially the right way to go.
Okay. And Tine, would you generally agree with that? Are different countries on different trajectories? Should they be forced to speed up?
Yes, I think so. But I think they want. It's just more stumbling and how, because I think it's not so easy. I think we need the general to modernize our rules and regulations so it is adapted to circular economy, for instance. Tomra cannot touch that because the reason why you don't have the return system, for instance, something easy as bottle is because we don't have those economical incentives baked in our system like we have, for instance, in Norway. And it's very easy to do, but it needs to come from a governmental regulation. And for instance, I know in Vietnam now they are quite close to do so. So then you put some economy into the bottle collection, and then you don't need to have the bottle floating around. But we have also, for instance, we are working now with the CO2. And of course, it's not so regulated yet either. So for instance, we are looking now into planting mangroves. Because mangroves are absorbing a lot of CO2. One tree is absorbing 1 ton over 20 years. So it is a very good source of absorbing CO2. But it's the rules and the international rules and regulations how you calculate and trade is not there either. So we are a little bit in an immature stage worldwide also, I think. So we need to work with that. So globally too.
That is such an important message, isn't it? And sadly, I think we're going to have to leave it at that because we have run out of time. Once again, a very big round of applause, Poyan Rajamand and Tine Rørvik. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about sustainable urban solutions.
Thanks, Tina.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Great to meet you. And next, before our final discussion on future ports and fuels, here's a video from DNV, which is the world's leading classification society, and a trusted voice in tackling global transformation since 1864. 70% of DNV's business is related to the production, generation, transmission, and transport of energy, and the company's purpose is to safeguard life, property, and the environment. Let's take a look at this video. Fantastic message there. Next, we have a video from Thum, which offers ship management and other fully integrated services to the shipping and offshore sectors. Great. So I should say at this point, we're just under an hour before we announce the winner of that flock chair. We've had some incredible questions already on Slido. Please keep them coming, and please remember to put your full name if you want to win that chair. So we need your full name on those questions, please. And now we kick off our session on future ports and fuels with a message from the CEO of the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore, Quah Hoon.
Senior Minister of State, Cheong Tat, Your Excellency Evin Homu, Mr. Borge Brender, President of the World Economic Forum, Mr. Leonard Storns, President, Norwegian Business Association, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. A very good evening from Singapore. It is my pleasure to provide opening remarks to the Future Ports and Future Fuel session at the Singapore-Norway Innovation Conference 2021. Singapore and Norway are long-standing partners in maritime innovation and R&D collaboration. MPA and the Research Council of Norway signed our first MOU in 2000, and we recently extended for the 8th time in April this year. Our collaboration and our friendship extend to more than 2 decades. Let me take stock of some of our achievements. On talent and manpower, we have the Nanyang Technological University BI Partnership on Maritime Education and Training for our 2 countries. On R&D projects, there is the RCN SMI joint grant calls on R&D projects such as the ultra-high power wireless charging for maritime applications by the NTU, SINTEF and NTNU. On joint conferences, MPA, RCN, SMI and SINTEF Ocean have jointly organized 3 editions of the International Maritime and Port Technology and Development Conference, or MTEC in short. The 4th MTEC at Singapore Maritime Week 2022 is scheduled next April, together with the International Conference for Maritime Autonomous Surface Ships, or ICMAS for short. On innovation, Innovation Norway and the Norwegian Business Association Singapore, NBAS, we have facilitated 30 leaders from Norwegian maritime community in Singapore at a Maritime Innovation Workshop earlier this year to link maritime companies and the startups to address industry challenges. And we have several Norwegian companies such as Gard, Glafner's Digital and Wilhelmsen joining the challenge as corporate sponsors this year. Later, MPA's Chief Technology Officer Thomas will share more tomorrow. Now on technology development, SINTEF Oceans and TCOMS have jointly developed an R&D roadmap charting the focus areas for technology development of maritime autonomous surface ships. So we have come a long way, be it collaborations on talent, innovation, R&D projections, technology development, and we definitely have more to come. So let me, at this point, for the next part of my speech, share more on 3 key areas which, from MPA's perspective, will be transformative for the shipping and maritime industry in the future years to come. And these 3 key areas is first, digitalization of the global supply chain, second, decarbonization, and third, sustainable port initiative. Let me now elaborate each and individual one of them. First, digitalization. The integration of shipping into global supply chain, we have seen how global supply chain can be easily disrupted, especially during this pandemic. We need to do more to digitalize the entire global supply chain to integrate the different players in the chain. The Center for Global Enterprise estimates that improved digital supply chains can lead to 20% reduction of procurement costs, 50% reduction of supply chain costs, and a 10% increase in revenue. So why don't we move forward on that? Data-driven logistics business can reap the benefits of improved operational efficiency, last mile and real-time route optimization, and better capacity building. However, one gap exists: the common data standards that's needed to unlock all these benefits. So there are 3 areas here where I want to elaborate a little bit on where Singapore is pushing the boundary. First, electronic bills of lading, EBL. The take-up so far has been quite mixed across different segments. Based on the recent poll, the adoption in container and liquid bulk segments were much lower, say less than 5%, compared to dry bulk segment averaging about 15%. So a study by the DCSA reveals that a paper BL can cost 3 times that of electronic BL. A 50% adoption rate by the container shipping industry alone could save $4 billion annually. So what has MPA done? We have issued a call for proposal to pilot EBL solutions that are based on open standards and meeting the relevant international frameworks. And we hope to increase the participation rate of the EBL. Second, on digitalization, digital bunkering. It is estimated that digital bunkering would save the industry at least 13 million a year through reduced manual processing. So it is with this in mind that MPA launched a digital bunkering program earlier this year, and we will be onboarding the companies in this program soon. So we look forward to having more companies join us in this initiative. Third digital initiative, digital oceans. So going beyond a one-stop port clearance via Digiport at SG, Singapore, we are advancing this digital ocean initiative. What is it about? It is to facilitate efficient ship-to-port connectivity, where we have standards harmonization and we have interoperability across different systems and platforms. It is an inclusive model where we adopt common data standards and API specification for data that's generated by the port that the industry can align towards. For this, we will need as many stakeholders on board as possible as well. So I've mentioned 3 key digital initiatives that MPA is embarking on. A highly digitalized, innovative and sustainable supply chain stringing together all the stakeholders will be key. We therefore invite Norway to partner Singapore in this digital transformation journey, and we certainly welcome all industry stakeholders to partner us, whether it's EBL, digital bunkering, or the digital ocean. So I've talked a fair bit about digitalization. Now, let me go on to the second part, which is on decarbonization. It's a very exciting topic. We are in a major phase of transition. And Norway is a front runner on this. You have ambitious targets, you have good goals. So Singapore, what we want is to seek to play this bridge builder role between developed and developing countries, between shipping and energy companies, between regulators and industry partners. For decarbonization to advance, we need to address the key hurdles. And what are these key hurdles? First, regulation, both internationally and domestically. Second, viable business cases for international shipping, harborcraft, and terminals. Third, investments in infrastructure to develop alternative fuels. Fourth, availability of green financing. And fifth, the technical and safety standards for the handling of alternative fuels. Most importantly, for decarbonization, we need to break through the chicken and egg situation. Why do I say that? We do need both public, private, as well as academic to move in tandem. We need the entire value chain ecosystem along new energy line. So if the fuel energy is bio-LNG or methanol or ethanol or biodiesel, ammonia and a longer-term hydrogen, we need the entire ecosystem to move in tandem, whether it is the energy producer, whether it is the shipyard, ship makers, whether it is the class societies and financial and classification society. So this is very important for them to move in tandem. Any commercially viable future ship will need availability of alternative fuels, and this, from the regulator perspective and from the port authority perspective, it requires bunkering infrastructure and international standards to ensure safety. This also requires investments and financing. So, on the personal front, I do foresee momentum gaining exponentially in the coming years. And in Singapore, we have put in place pillars and structures to advance this agenda. We have the Global Center for Maritime Decarbonisation. We have 6 founding partners, including DMV Foundation. And the whole objective is to move maritime industry by shaping standards, deploying solutions, financing projects, and fostering collaborations across the sector. So Prof. Lynn, who is the CEO of GCMD, is on the panel, and she will share more on the collaboration opportunities with GCMD. There are also 3 consortiums that have been jointly awarded by MPA and SMI The objective is to develop and deploy full electric hovercrafts over the next 5 years. These consortiums are led by Keppel Phelps Limited, SeaTech Solutions, and Semcott Marine. And it comprises 30 enterprises and research institutes. So it's a push that we want to move forward for our domestic hovercraft. On the ocean-going front, MPA, we have also joined the Castor Initiative, whose members include the MISC Berhad, Lloyd's Register, Man Energy Solutions, Samsung Heavy Industries, and Yara International. We are aiming to develop an ammonia-fueled tanker by 2025 and call on the Port of Singapore. So beyond bunkering, the deployment of energy efficiency technologies, energies and storage, and infrastructure for low-carbon fuels to meet IMO's 2050 target is expected to cost US $1.2 trillion, according to the UMA study conducted in January 2020. So, it is a huge task ahead. It's a major transition we are going forward on. Let us keep this momentum going. We have not much time to lose. So I've talked about digitalization, I've talked about decarbonization. Lastly, I want to talk about sustainability, innovation, opportunities in the port ecosystem. The theme of this conference is, after all, future ports and future fuels. So let me elaborate a little bit on what we are doing on the port side. To make domestic target for decarbonization, PSA, they are working to shift to low-carbon fuels and electrification of container handling equipment. For example, they will convert container handling equipment from diesel to electric. They will explore electric prime movers and battery-fueled or battery-powered automated guided vehicles. They will develop smart grid system for port applications for trials, and they will develop a carbon footprint calculator with shipping lines and logistics service provider. And last, they will explore the cost and operational viability of renewable energy sources, such as prime movers being powered by low organic hydrogen carriers. Our other terminal operator, Jurong Port, also has the world's first green berths made from recycled concrete and is home to the world's largest port-based solar power generation facility. And I know Jurong Port has further ambitions to move towards decarbonization. Now, on the future fuels or future energy front, MPA, we are planning for a multi-fuel future. So the Port of Oslo is one of the front runners for a multi-fuel future, having embarked on several alternative fuel initiatives for the shipping. We know that Oslo has gone into biofuel, ammonia, and exploring hydrogen. So on this note, I do think that there is scope for us to exchange knowledge in this area so that the Port of Oslo and the Port of Singapore can be two of the port networks to assure our industry of energy availability for their future ships. So let me now conclude. We are in a major transition in not just shipping and ports, but also energy and supply chain. It is never a better time to be in this industry. We are chartering new paths and new directions. It requires planning, agility, and resilience. Strategic partnerships such as that between Singapore and Norway are extremely valuable, for us, at least. So let me now throw a challenge for both Singapore and Norway stakeholders. Let us focus on the key challenge statements in each of the three areas that I mentioned earlier: digitalization, decarbonization, port innovation. Let's continue to work hand in hand in nudging the transformation process forward for ourselves and for the industry. So with that, I come to the end of my speech. Look forward to hearing from every one of you in terms of your views on these areas, and thank you very much.
Well, I'm sure you'll agree that was a very great and comprehensive message from Quah Hoon, the CEO of MPA, and really a great message that's going to set the context of our next conversation, which is a fireside chat with the CEO of the Global Centre of Maritime Decarbonisation, Dr. Lynn Lu, who was actually mentioned in the speech as well. Great to see you, Lynn. Fantastic. Great to have you here. Now, we have 10 minutes to talk about this, and it's a big subject, yes. As you heard there. The CEO talking about digitization, decarbonization, port innovation. There's so much to do. But first off, I'm really fascinated to hear about the centre that you represent. It's just launched. Tell us what that signifies.
Yeah, so good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. So as Quah Hoon had mentioned, the center was formally founded August 1 of this year, so it's only a little more than 2.5 months old. Let me maybe back up and tell you a little bit about the center. So it's a non-for-profit organization and a private-public partnership. And the mission, as Hoon had mentioned earlier on, is to help the maritime industry eliminate greenhouse gas emissions through a number of measures by shaping standards, deploying solutions, financing projects, and fostering collaboration across sectors. We're backed by 6 industry players across the supply chain, so diverse in itself, and then of course by the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore. To accomplish our mission, we're going to do a technical and commercial assessment of solutions because that's important for incumbent technologies. And then we're going to commission pilots and projects. And if you look at pilots and projects, well, what are the major hurdles associated with doing pilots and projects? Well, there are 3 large buckets of hurdles, if you will. There's the technology piece, there's the finance piece, and then there's the regulatory piece. And we believe we're positioned to be able to address all 3 of them. So the technology piece comes in when we interact with solution providers and solution adopters. The projects team at GCMD are engineers and scientists. We can vet these technologies. We can use our networks to vet these technologies. And then that comes the sort of the action piece. Because MPA is involved, through MPA we have early access for early dialogue with the regulators and the various government agencies so that we can provide the right regulatory sandboxing, if you will, so that we can get the pilots in place early on. And since time is of essence when we come to decarbonization, that's important. And then the finance piece comes from our industry founding partners and MPA who are backing us up. So that's how we're thinking about this in terms of conducting pilots so that we can lower the barrier for adoption for incumbent technologies.
Yeah, wow. It sounds like you have hit the ground running since you launched the center in August. That's extraordinary, an extraordinary list of things that you're doing. But I guess, you know, for all of us here, you know, you hear about decarbonizing and just the challenges that lie behind that. I mean, just how tough is it and challenging is it to truly decarbonize the maritime industry? I mean, I read somewhere that apparently if the maritime sector was a country, it would be the 6th most polluting country in the world. So just break it down very simply for us. How can it be done?
So just to put things in perspective, the emissions from international shipping is about 3% of the global carbon emissions. So from that standpoint, you go, well, 3% is not that much. But it's really hard to decarbonize the shipping sector because the carbon primarily comes from burning fuel. And 90% of global trade happens by shipping. So shipping's critical, right? And because the fuel is the decarbonization part, is the hard part, we need to identify new fuels or alternative fuels that have lower carbon content or 0 carbon content. And currently there isn't a 0 carbon fuel that's sort of in the horizon for us. So that's where the complexity lies. The energy ecosystem is very complex. It involves energy producers, even today, right? Energy producers, and then the ship owners and the ship operators who actually use that energy to transport the cargo to the consumers. And so the whole ecosystem is quite complex and intertwined, and that's why decarbonization is hard. I mean, another perspective to look at things is to look at the energy infrastructure as we know it today. The energy infrastructure as we know it today took more than a century to build. And we're now talking about a transformation that needs to happen within 3 decades. So that is a big challenge in itself.
Wow, okay. Well, you know, we started off this conference looking ahead. It's 10 days to COP26. So tell us, why is it so crucial to get this done right now? What kind of commitment are you seeing from the industry? I mean, it was great to hear from Quah Hoon, and this sounds like true commitment there from MPA, but is it across the board?
I would say the industry is generally very enthusiastic. We're looking for solutions, right? I mean, it's not like electrification where there are solutions out there. It's a matter of speed, right? It's a matter of how fast can we move. Here, I think we're still looking for solutions. COP is exciting because, generally COP is exciting because it's 5 years from the Paris Accord. And so this is the point where countries and nations come and check in their voluntary targets to see whether they've met their targets and whether they can ratchet up their targets to become more ambitious. It's exciting because this is the first meeting where international shipping is involved in. So I think this is an opportunity for us to come together and set targets. But what I would be looking for personally is beyond COP, how do we channel all that enthusiasm and all that energy that goes into COP in setting up all these targets and all these goals, whether we can now take action and materialize what's been set forth at COP.
Yeah, it is so crucial, isn't it? And, it's great that you're here running it as well. And I should say, questions, please, for Lynn Lu. It's not often you get an expert like you sitting up here on stage with us. You're a professor from Princeton, so really extraordinary. But give us a sense of just, when you took this job, what was going through your mind? It must have been just such a challenge, and yet, such a chance to make some impact.
It is. So I don't come from the maritime sector. So my research works on emerging technologies, but we build solar cells with emerging materials, right? So my perspective comes from the energy systems perspective. And so this to me was an exciting endeavor because it is an opportunity to take what we've been studying at Princeton University and to put it into practice. Maritime is also exciting because it's a global industry. International shipping's carbon emissions is not really accounted for any single nation. In that sense, it is sort of a contained sector on its own. So if there's an opportunity to think about a global regulation or a global carbon policy, I would say shipping as well as aviation in that respect is probably as good a chance as any that you would get in terms of thinking about global carbon policy. And that's something that one would need to nudge us forward towards a decarbonized world.
Yeah, and if you could nudge it just even a little bit, that really makes an impact, doesn't it? That's extraordinary. I guess, we've got a few more minutes left to this conversation. Ultimately, as you've been saying, it is a challenge. But how challenging is it to bring the entire industry together? You've got ship owners, container companies, ports, regulators. There's so many stakeholders in this huge industry. How do they all work together with organizations like yours, with the IMO, for instance? How do they come together? How do you envision the future?
Collaboration is key, partnerships is key, but I think the key is to bite off a small chunk at a time. So I'll give you an example. So 2 Fridays ago, we issued our first, 2.5 months in, so we were very proud of doing this, we issued our first invitation for proposal. And our invitation for proposal is to commission a study to define the safety and operations envelope for bunkering ammonia. And so how do we come about this problem? So we recognize that ammonia is going to be an important fuel of the future. It may not be the only one, and in fact, we know it's probably not going to be the only one, but it's going to be an important one. And if you look across the supply chain, there are projects working on developing engines for ammonia. There are projects developing vessels for ammonia on storage terminal. Where we found a gap is in transporting ammonia from one spot to another, right? And if ammonia were to become a bunkering fuel, you would need to have to figure out how to transport ammonia from one spot to another. So we identified that as a gap, and so we've decided that we're going to commission a study. So we brought in industry partners who have proprietary information or who have experience dealing with ammonia as a cargo to come together, and we're going to invite respondents to the proposal to issue a study to look at the specifications and identify the specifications with which we can safely handle ammonia. I think, everybody knows ammonia is a very toxic gas, but I'm inspired by success stories like how the industry have figured out how to deal with chlorine. Chlorine is a very toxic gas, but the chemical industry recognized its importance in disinfecting, and as a disinfectant, as well as a chemical precursor. So the chemical industry figured out how to design and develop safety standards around how to handle it safely, just like silane for semiconductor industry as well. And I think, it's our responsibility to figure out how to define the standards or define the guidelines so that we can safely handle ammonia as a bunker if it were going to become a future fuel.
Yeah, fascinating.
So all the stakeholders need to come together in that respect.
That is absolutely crucial, isn't it? Now, we've still got 2 minutes, and there is a question here about the maritime industry from Chin Zheng, who asks, are there targets for the maritime electrification for 2030/40? What are the key challenges and recent progresses?
So there are targets for the maritime sector, and the targets are the IMO targets, which the 2050 target basically says that the maritime sector needs to halve its carbon emissions relative to the 2008 levels by 2050. And one can look at that, especially if you look at that relative to, the ambitions and the targets that countries or corporations have declared. This, some may criticize that this is not ambitious enough, but considering that global shipping is going to grow by 3 times by 2050, this number is actually quite ambitious. And then considering that we don't know what the next fuel is, so this number is actually quite, so I think the answer is we need to move as fast as we can. There are targets to guide us. But it's a big hurdle up front, and we need to move quickly.
Okay, so the next question I'm going to ask you is the last one, but possibly the toughest. Do you think we will hit that target?
I don't, unless we decide we're going to fry, I don't think we have a choice. We need to move fast. And so it's going to have to take all of us rolling up our sleeves where we can and contribute towards solving this challenge.
Yeah, wise words indeed. Thank you so much for coming up here, speaking to us today. Lynn Lu, thank you. A warm round of applause. Well, I think we learned a lot from that session, really extraordinary. But before we get to our final panel discussion of the day, here's a quick video from Simonsen Folkvig, which is a leading Norwegian law firm assisting clients within all key industries and all legal practices. Let's have a look at this video. Wonderful. Well, it now remains for me to introduce our final session for today. And we have 4 experts and a mere half an hour to learn as much as we can about future ports and fuels. So without further delay, let me introduce the Director of the Maritime Decarbonisation and Autonomy Centre of Excellence at DNV. We have Dr. Shahrin Osman. We also have our Chief Sustainability Officer from MPA, Tham Waiwa. Ingrid Kilstad led the Zero Lab of Cleverness. She's the sustainability lead. She's joining us via webcam. Welcome, Ingrid. And we also have Richard Harvey, who's the General Manager of Siemens Energy in Singapore. Welcome to you all. Fantastic to see you all. You have our final session of today, so we're really going to have to leave with some really important messages here. Now, we just heard Lynn set the context very well for what really needs to be done in the maritime industry. So what do each of you think is the biggest priority? What needs to be done first to help the maritime industry start the journey toward the green transition? Now, Ingrid, I know you're on webcam, so why don't you start first? Oh, we're having some trouble hearing you. Just... we're going to try to get the audio back. Yes, we hear you now. Go ahead.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to come here and speak. You know, I think the whole maritime industry is, we are eager to decarbonize. And right now, as was mentioned earlier, there's a chicken and egg situation. As we're waiting for regulators to come with a carbon price, something we think is absolutely essential to get the ball rolling, I think what we need is to see extensive collaboration between cargo owners and ship owners to just get the ball rolling and see some joint wins in decarbonization.
Okay, fantastic. So, Shahrin, what do you think needs to be done first?
Yes, of course, we should not wait. We have to start now in terms of the green journey. And I think, first of all, as an industry, we need to account for our emission. I think follow up with, the ability for us to be able to report, to be transparent about what we're emitting. And that would not be enough. We need then to find ways to improve. And I see that is where we have digital technologies, applications that can help us towards the entire journey. But we shouldn't wait for the perfect solution. It has to start now.
All right. So digitization, that's another word we heard earlier as well from Quah Hoon. What's your suggestion?
Fully agree. I think in order to start the journey, I think it's very important that we must get everyone on the same track, right? That includes the public, the private, as well as academics. All must move in tandem, right? Be it the entire value chain of the ecosystem also need to move along the new fuel and energy, be it biofuel, methanol, hydrogen, and whatever, right? Everything needs to be fall in place, right, in order for it to start. And more importantly, we have our directions as authority. I mean, I'm coming from MPA. We have to be clear to the stakeholders who are actually within the organization, within the industry. Hopefully, they can follow and know how to decarbonize the activities or their own activities following these kind of directions that we have set for them. Right?
Yeah. And Richard, what's your take?
So digitization was mentioned. I mean, that's important. Equally, decarbonisation is a key area. So that really is a mixture of the e-fuels and energy storage, in my view. So it's that hybrid solution, fuels, electrification, that is really the thing that will help decarbonise.
Yeah, no, and I've heard, a combination of different things from all of you. It's not just one thing, there's a lot of different things that need to be tackled at once. But seeing as this discussion is also talking about future fuels, it is a major discussion point, and there are new technologies. We heard from Lynn earlier about ammonia, but still not safe, so we really need to explore to try to achieve a cleaner maritime industry. So how do each of you see that transition occurring? Ingrid, shall we start with you again?
The transition will happen at rather uneven pace, I think, throughout different regions, also as the regulatory landscape evolves. If you look at Europe, we will be facing a carbon price on shipping emissions in just 2 years down the road. and also requirements for the mixing in of alternative fuels into the fuel mix. So I think you will see that in certain regions, things will speed up quite fast because of the regulatory push. So I think we need to, as an industry, recognize that unevenness and maybe also look at some business models that helps capture the value in the uneven availability of alternative fuels, availability of infrastructure, and also availability of demand for greener solutions. And that's something that we are spending quite a lot of time on in ZeroLab to see how we can, how we think that more concentrated demand for green solutions, how that can be maybe dealt with in a more global manner through maybe some intra-shipping, credits trading as an alternative to carbon offsets. But I think we need to really think outside of the box to leverage the fact that different regions will transition at different pace.
Yeah, no, interesting, isn't it? A combination of factors is again what I'm hearing. So it's not just about future fuels, carbon offsets. Talked a little bit about electrification earlier as well. What do you think, Shahrin?
Yeah, I think indeed there's also a need for the industry to collaborate. I think we don't just talk about it in DNV, we're actually doing it. For example, the LNG as fuel started maybe about a year ago in Singapore. The joint industry project that is led by DNV, actually we started in 2010. So it takes 10 years to joint industry project that leads to where we are. I think this Hoon mentioned about the electrification, and like DNV, we work together with the Keppel Consortium to be part of that collaboration. And also we now working with PSA to look at how can we help the ship to maybe optimize its arrival, so then that you can start to look at emission reduction to speed optimization. So I think it's key to collaborate, and of course as DNV, as a Norwegian company here, we have done a lot of joint industry projects, and I think we need to do more of that to make it happen.
Yeah. And why, do you tend to agree?
Yeah, for MPA, I think we are now embarking on a multi-fuel bunkering future, like what CA Hoon has mentioned. I think based on our experience on LNG bunkering, we felt that we should actually facilitate the adoptions of multiple fuels, right? And at the same time, making sure that they're able scalable for global adoption. Now, we also believe that we should create an enabling environment where all the industry leaders are able to participate in trying out on the future fuels. Now, what we have been doing right now, or we're trying to explore as a regulatory body, is to create some sort of a regulatory sandbox where we can actually allow the industry partners or to actually try out some of the future fuels. But I think the objective of it is to foster collaborations and also to give some broad guidelines to some of the interested parties who are willing to try it out. And hopefully they're able, from holistic assessment, able to have be convinced of the viability of the fuel. But more importantly, I think that MPA is trying on multi-fuels. We believe there's no silver bullet, right? We should not just give up on a certain fuel and then explore on one, right? There are many things that we need to do. New ships, when it's been manufactured, will have to depend on the availability of the fuels that they actually built on. And we need to be mindful of the investment cost that is being so-called added in by the shipbuilders. So as a regulatory, we have to be careful on that if we want to transit them into the low-carbon economy. Yeah. Right, thanks.
Yeah, great. And Richard?
Yeah, so maybe I can start with a couple of examples globally. So there's one case we've been involved in where we're working with Gamesa, the wind turbine business, to renewably produce e-fuels in Chile, and these will be off-taken by Porsche to be used in Europe. We have another example with Maersk, a similar case, where they will off-take methanol on a project that we're involved with, renewably creating energy. So these are global, and I don't see any reason why this sort of thing cannot be started in Singapore. With these two cases I've mentioned, there is government. In fact, the first case has government funding. The second case is purely a private initiative. So these things can start, and I think that in Singapore, we can start on a small scale with a solution and just try and start moving in the right direction. We don't need to wait for regulation particularly. So I think what's important is working with a third country potentially where the renewables are there to create some of these fuels and start using them. And it may be that vessels cannot be 100% using those fuels, and this is where a hybrid solution come in with electric battery storage as well. So my view is it's possible to start something now. We don't have to wait too long to get everything in place and run it fully commercially.
Yeah, so it's interesting. There's a combination of different solutions out there. It's not just one, is it? And by the way, there's some great questions on Slido, but I do want to hear some questions about the maritime industry specifically. So if any of you can think about some great questions for our panelists, we literally have 15 more minutes with them. But I'm going to ask my next question because, you know, so much of what we see in the shipping industry, let's face it, so much of the infrastructure needs desperately to be changed. I mean, we need a greener maritime industry. You've got lots of old ships using polluting fuels. You've got the infrastructure behind bunkering and ports that will require massive transformation and costs. So can it be done? Why don't we start with you, Quah? Because I know MPA, as you say, is a regulator. It's trying to push for it, isn't it?
Okay, I think it is important, as I mentioned earlier, that first, before we even talk about infrastructure, we must be able to work on the upstream activities first. That is to ensure that we have an enabling environment for them to try out the future fuels. Right? Let me share our experience. I think being MPA, we are leveraging on our LNG bunkering experience. We are able to actually advise, right, and facilitate the kind of pilot trials of the fuels by the industry players, and of course helping them to scale up to global adoption. But what's more important right now is to make sure that the right fuel is being introduced at the right time, so that when the infrastructure is being built, it will not be something that is only for that fuel. It should be a hybrid system. We have actually examined the existing infrastructure in Singapore, and we felt that some of the existing infrastructures can actually support biofuels and LNG gas. Right? And that is why we are also trying to explore an MPA perspective on ammonia bunkering right now. Right? That is aligned with the Singapore hydrogen strategy. Now, whether we should actually embark on the infrastructure cost or infrastructure aspect of the future fuel now, I think it's yet to be seen. And until it is firmed up and finalized in all aspects with the rest of the authorities that we are working with, then we will actually maybe publish a notification to the industry what we're supposed to do. But right now, it's still at the exploratory stage. Like what Hoon mentioned, we have lots of things on the plate. We are working on it. And hopefully, when we get all stitched up, we will be able to announce it to the industry.
Okay, well, we wait with bated breath to hear that. What about the rest of you? I mean, Shireen, what do you think? I mean, there's a huge amount of cost in this, and obviously you're a big investor that looking into spending the money, investing to enable this to happen.
I guess as a maritime sector, we cannot look at our need in isolation. There's no way, right? I mean, Singapore has become the world's biggest bunkering hub because of our petrochemical sector, right? I mean, so it's not just from the maritime side, but because of the what we call adjacent industry that we have here. So as we move into the transition of the newer fuel, I think we also got to broaden as maritime our mind of what about the upstream players, the energy system ecosystem? How do we bring them, into the space? So then that we can look at the needs or the demands, beyond just for maritime to make it viable. Because you need certain things, economies of scale. And the build-up for, let's say, ammonia also will not be overnight in terms of the demand, just like LNG, right? So it builds over time. And then we need to build ahead of this, the demand. So again, so here, beyond just collaboration within the maritime ecosystem, but there is need to collaborate outside the ecosystem to ensure then that the investment could also look at for example, the entire industry needs in Singapore, and then to portion out, what would be the demand for maritime. So it's really think out of the box and think broader to make it happen, and then you can get maybe the financing, right? Because then if they see there's a big demand and requirement, then it's easier to come up with the financing rather than just look at the small demand, which may take maybe a decade, until all the new ships are built with, let's say, ammonia as fuel. Then the demand will come in.
Yeah.
So that's our thoughts. Yeah.
And that's a little bit about what we heard from Lynn earlier as well, as to how maritime could also apply to aviation, for instance, and it just needs to be a lot of different industries at once. Richard, your take?
Yeah, so when it comes to the adoption of e-fuels, we see some companies that are moving in this direction because they feel it's better for them to get financing and better for them from the public perception to move in this area. And typically that has been companies in Europe that are doing that, Western Europe. Maybe it's starting in the US as well now. So I think if companies are not willing to do that, there has to be some push from the MPA to cut out the oldest vessels first. We have to do that. If you're driving an old car, there's a point in time where the government don't allow you to run it anymore, unless it's a vintage vehicle. So I think this is important. There should be some regulation to say, okay, vessels over a certain age or with certain emissions, you're not allowed to use this port anymore. So I think Singapore can lead in that. The legislation doesn't have to happen overnight. You can give a warning. It's 3-5 years down the line. And then it's up to those companies if they want to gradually make the upgrades on the vessels.
Yeah, subsidization, that's a good word, isn't it? What do you think, Ingrid, listening over there from where you are?
Well, I think it's absolutely critical to provide some incentives for front runners, because those incentives are not there in the market yet. I think there's a lot of good points in this discussion, and I appreciate all the complexity. But the decarbonization of shipping comes down to two things, and that's availability of renewables to actually create the zero emission fuel that we need, and the carbon tax. And I think without those two components in place, it's going to be a very difficult task. So I think that the most important task for a regulator is to actually make sure that these two pieces of the puzzle come together sooner rather than later. Because the market so far is not able to price in the externalities of CO2. But while we're waiting for that, I think there is still a scope to create some really prosperous collaborations between cargo owners and ship owners. And I think it's been very interesting to following also the media over the past days to see, cargo owner alliances popping up to say that they will demand zero emission shipping and low carbon fuels in just a few years. The Sea Cargo Charter is another great initiative to provide more transparency into the emissions from bulk. But we need to take it from knowledge about the situation into some collaborative business models. And I think cargo owners have a really important role to play to work with front runners on the shipping side to incentivize early adoption of technologies and to really prove that demand is there while we're waiting for a carbon price to really get the ball rolling. Because I think, truth to be told, a lot of the technology is there, but it's more about making sure that the demand for the solutions we would like to provide is also there.
Yeah, interesting that the technology, and there's a lot of it, as you say, that's out there, so we just need to harness it. Now, there's a question here that's specific to what we've been talking about, so thank you very much, Kunal Pathak, for asking this question. Singapore is significantly invested in LNG bunkering. Now, given that what we've heard, LNG is only a transitional fuel, how long do you expect LNG to remain viable as a fuel for ships? Anyone want to take that up?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the question is a fair one. I think now MPA is now embarking on the LNG bunkering licenses, as most of you are aware. But we are, as I mentioned earlier on, now we are exploring on the ammonia bunkering aspect of it, right? And before we actually go deeper to even study the development of the infrastructure, right? We are actually trying to pilot trial some of the fuels. Right? So as I recall, I think Hoon did mention in his speech, we are also involved in some of the ammonia's projects with the industry partners, such as Castor Initiative, right, where we're trying to develop an ammonia tanker by 2025. This is how close it can get. So once the ship side is settled, then we will have to concentrate on the shore side. That is to prepare for the bunkering aspect. So this is as fast as we can actually plan to move forward in the transition of the next bunkering fuel. Yep.
Yeah, fascinating. Actually, there's another really great question here, again, from Kunal. Thank you for that. You're obviously a maritime specialist. This is really quite worrying. Vessel incidents that lead to bunker spills. What if ammonia was in the bunker? What happens then? I mean, these are all concerns that we need to obviously think about in the future. And it's not just ammonia, there's all sorts of other things out there as well. So what are some of the concerns and challenges you see when it comes to implementing these green transitions, but perhaps, the effects of it is not as good as, well, they're never good if you have a spill, but what are the potential, dangers that lie ahead?
Yep.
Again, whoever wants to take that
definitely.
up. Yeah.
And I think, of course, safety at sea is really essential, right? And whatever fuel that we introduce, I think that is core in terms of to make sure it's safe. And I think that's why I think on one hand, of course, we need to look at the transition from LNG, but to do it safely, I think that should be also an industry concern. And it takes, for example, LNG, 20 years, 2 decades to make it mainstream globally. I mean, the first LNG fuel ship in Norway in the year 2000. So then we have to look at ammonia, 2 aspects. One is the safety element, but the other one is about the scalability, right? The availability and the scalability of it. So we have to also be realistic, going back to the first question about how fast we transition from LNG to alternative fuel in terms of the safety, the availability, and then the scalability of it in different ports. Because shipping is a global business, so it's not just a Singapore solution, but it has to be a global solution, and that's why it takes so long to build the, let's say, LNG bunkering infrastructure globally. So then we also got to think about what about other countries, especially ammonia or methanol would have lower energy density than LNG, which means to say then that either you have a larger tank on board the ship, or you need to do a lot more bunkering to cover the same destination. So there are a lot of, as I said, the whole dynamics that needs to be considered, But definitely, I think safety is something that we shouldn't compromise.
Just to add on that point, I think the Sharon has mentioned correctly, shipping is a global business. And because of that, I think our MPA has actually partnered with other international ports, like Port of Rotterdam and even MLIT Japan, right, to form what we call the Future Fuel Network, to drive the adoption of fuels. So beyond this R&D on pilot trials of future fuels, we are also, each member are now actually exploring on running bunkering runs, right, along the identifying shipping lines, so as to drive this decarbonization in shipping. So you're right. I think besides just running the trials, it's also important that we must set some standards. And these 3 ports are actually currently working in small steps to see how we can actually harmonize the standards, right, so that to be able to adopt the future fuel safely.
Okay. Now, we've just got 2 more minutes, but I still have a couple of great questions now. There's a lot of maritime questions on Slido, so thank you, everyone who's been sending them through. This is an interesting one from Siddharth Mahajan. Can collaboration between ship owners, charterers, and cargo owners be expanded upon? I mean, we talked a little bit about collaboration and how it's crucial, but truly, it's so specific in the maritime industry where you have these different players and stakeholders out there. I mean, how challenging is it?
I think it needs determination and definitely the organization to do that. I think I can share with you then that DNV have done precisely that just 3 years ago. We call it the Green Corridor. That is the transportation of iron ore from Northern Australia to China. And we bring in everyone that needs to be in the group, charterers such as BHP, Rio Tinto, ship owners such as MOL, shipyards, as well as fuel suppliers such as Shell into the picture. And then what we are pleased to see then that it's not just coming out with an outcome of a ship design and the whole value chain, how it can work, but now that have translated into real projects that BHP have assigned, 5 ships to EPS, the dual fuel LNG carriers. So it shows then that it can be done. In that case, facilitated by DNV. Let's say we are here to collaborate with the stakeholders, and then moving it from a feasibility study into actual realization. And I think the ship is on the waters undergoing sea trial. So I think that is how trying to make it from a joint venture project, a feasibility into reality, I think within less than 5 years.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Now, we've got 30 seconds. This is where I ask the really rapid-fire question. And it's a question that I'm going to, I asked earlier in our session when we opened as well, which is ending today on an optimistic note, because let's face it, I don't know how many of you are sitting out there feeling depressed about climate change. I know certainly I am. So in 10 seconds or less, give us a sense of optimism. Do you think we can achieve carbon neutrality by 2050? And what quick, specific solutions can be done to achieve it, I guess, within the maritime industry. So who wants to go first? Richard, go on.
It's basically 30 years. I think it's achievable. Electrification is the answer in my view.
Okay,
with
fantastic.
Renewables.
Electrification, why what?
Yeah, we are very confident that we can achieve the 2050 neutrality. Right? We are really targeted to achieve 2030, and we can actually map it out. Right? And you can see our blueprint come first quarter 2022.
Fantastic. Optimistic and confident. Fantastic. Sharin?
Definitely yes. I think, like what I said earlier, we start now and leveraging on what we have now, for example, on digital technologies.
Fantastic. And Ingrid, you get the last word.
Yes, it can happen, but then the IMO and governments need to reduce the green premium so that it makes financial sense to run on zero-emission fuels.
Wonderful. Well, I'm so pleased that every one of you are optimistic and that we can achieve it. I know that today was a great chance to discuss solutions where we can get there step by step. So once again, a big round of applause to our fantastic panelists. And thank you, audience, as well, for those fantastic questions and for being so engaged on Slido. And this is the point where I will announce the winner. So thank you once again, gentlemen. Thank you, Ingrid. And I believe all the numbers and votes have been counted up. We're going to be announcing the winner of that wonderful flock chair.
Okay. Are you on it?
Excellent, we have a name. Congratulations to Gabriel Chuan Yi Puan. You get to go home with the Flock Hag Capiscope chair, which is just sitting right there, and it's going to transform your work from home experience. Now, I don't know if you're here, Gabriel. Are you here? He is? No? Okay, but we will get in touch with you, and we will get you that chair. Thank you so much for asking all the fabulous questions that we've got from everyone, and Gabrielle gets to go home as the winner. Now, finally, I would like to, at this stage, invite onto the stage the person who's really been instrumental in keeping this entire summit and conference together. You've been getting lots of messages from him, I'm sure. Anders Hegre, who's the Executive Director of the Norwegian Business Association of Singapore. Anders, what was your biggest takeaway today?
I think I must say that the urgency that Benjamin Horton outlined for us, I think it has really taken place in us. And I'm really optimistic that we will reach our goals. Of course, there is a limited amount of time that we can take all of you guys out of your usual business to discuss innovation. But I think now and then we really need to get together, create new bonds, come up, share ideas. And the next time, I promise you will get a lunch and you will get as much coffee as you want to. So, and with that, I will also say that this exceeded my expectations. There is many people to thank. We need, there is the board of NBAS and its members that has put this on the agenda. There is the fantastic cooperation within Team Norway with the Embassy and Innovation Norway. And we have our supporting partners in Enterprise Singapore and Maritime Port Authority of Singapore. And they have been very good to cooperate with, and we share the same goal. So it's been a pleasure, and I will also thank all our sponsors that has made this possible. And also, in the end, the audience, but you, Sharon Jit, who has really made this a fantastic day.
Thank you very much.
And I have a little surprise for you.
It doesn't look very little if that's what you're holding behind you. It looks enormous. What is that?
And there is an artist called Reza Hesna. He is the artist in residence for SNIC.
Fantastic.
And he uses a bit of magic in his paintings.
Wow.
And I think we can agree that we need a bit of magic to pull this off in the years to
We
come,
need
right?
magic to fight climate change, as well as all the other solutions we heard today. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
So with that, I
oh,
will show
wonderful.
it.
Oh, isn't that fantastic? How beautiful is this? I love it. Thank you so much. That's so extraordinary.
You're welcome. And then I will leave the last word to you.
All right. Well, my last word is thank you again for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you to all our panelists and all our speakers today for giving us such an engaging topic to be involved in. And thank you to all of you, the audience here in Suntec and those watching at home. You've all been fantastic. Thank you for all your marvelous questions as well. And good evening. Thanks, Anders.